welcome to our learning event number 2, the webinar on Help is on the Way, ways the workforce system can support registered apprenticeships. I'm Shamara Bones, Senior Manager with Jobs for the Future. And today we will be hearing from Safal Partners. First up, we will have a session topic overview and introductions for the presenters by Mark General, the director here at JFF. And then we'll have a presentation from Safal Partners, a little quick Q&A, and then reminders and conclusions for next steps. And I'll hand it over to you, Mark.
Thank you. And again, welcome all. Thank you for joining us today for our what we're calling Learning Event number 2 webinar. This is our technically our third session in our community of practice. And as you know, a lot of all of you have been with us since the beginning. The first 2 sessions, we really kind of looked at registered apprenticeship from the community college angle and their partnership with the Workforce Board. And now starting this month and continuing on to next month's peer-to-peer session, we'll be kind of taking a turn and putting the focus on workforce boards, which, as you know, makes up the rest of our focus sites in this community of practice. So we'll really be taking a look at this month's and next month registered apprenticeship, the role workforce boards can play in registered apprenticeship, different ways, and how that partnership with community college works in apprenticeship. And for today, I am so happy that I have Alan and Melissa joining us from Safal Partners, which operates the US DOL funded Registered Apprenticeship Technical Assistance Center of Excellence on Strategic Partnerships and Systems Alignment. And as I mentioned, we have Alan Gotkowitz. He is an apprentice subject matter expert at Safal Partners at this TA center, and he works on a variety of different projects at Safal, where he offers technical assistance in helping entities align the workforce and apprenticeship system. Not only does he work on this center of excellence, but he also works on several other initiatives, including the Closing the Skills Gap project, where he provides TA to grantees in aid and program development and sustainability. And he also works on the USDOL Registered Apprenticeship Academy project, where he's creating a learning platform for RA stakeholders. Joining Alan is Melissa. Melissa, again, is with Safal Partners, working out of the Center of Technical Assistance. Melissa has an extensive background in workforce and economic development, as well as higher education, and served under multiple governors in multiple states on both sides of the aisle. She has served as a consultant at the federal, state, and local levels, as well as serving and leading private industry training for many Fortune 500 companies. Currently, Melissa is a senior project director and senior subject matter expert for Safal Partners on all things workforce, obviously including registered apprenticeship. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to both Melissa and Alan to take the rest of this session. Melissa?
Thanks so much, Mark. Let me make sure everyone can hear me. If you'll give me a thumbs up. I'm sure we're good. All right, awesome. If you'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so you can go on to the next slide. We've heard that help is on the way, so to speak, is the title of our presentation. It's really great to be with all of you. If you've noticed, I probably have a little bit of a Southern accent. I'm in Kentucky. I am originally from West Virginia, 7 states later in Kentucky. So I always get the, where are you from? Because of the accent. So again, really good to be with you. Just to tell you a little bit about the Center of Excellence on Registered Apprenticeship. We have been working with the Department of Labor for 4 years in working with registered apprenticeship with the Office of Apprenticeship at the federal level. Our contract specifically is designated toward providing no-cost TA services, and that includes a variety of different items. First and foremost, what I would say is we really concentrate on helping entities build strategic partnerships, and then really understanding how to align workforce and education systems. Additionally, while we're working throughout the U.S. and the territories, we come across a lot of promising practices as related to registered apprenticeship. So normally our customers will come to us and talk to us about, I'm having this issue, so I don't know what to do. A lot of times we've encountered those issues with other states or local areas of the workforce system, and so we'll do a lot of peer-to-peer gatherings as well. A lot of also what we hear is it's very difficult to find funding specifically for registered apprenticeship systems. So certainly we talk through systems like WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and then also in thinking about how other funding mechanisms can work with registered apprenticeship systems. Often when we talk through WIOA, we also get a lot of questions related to co-enrollment. So we've been digging in a little bit deeper than normal in co-enrollment in the states themselves. We do find a very low rate of co-enrollment when it comes to working with WIOA within the context of the workforce system at the state level. So therefore, we really try to boost the system participation in registered apprenticeship. And actually, we have an outcome as related to doubling the statewide WIOA participation in registered apprenticeship. As we are working with the federal level, that's certainly always something that they give us as an outcome. And they always ask the question, so how are we boosting the enrollment in both of those systems? If you'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so Alan, you want to do a little bit of a poll here? We have a very small crowd, so hopefully we can have a lot of conversation and discussion as well.
Sure. Before we get into our presentation, we wanted to just see what your knowledge is of the registered apprenticeship system. Is it basic? You know what it is, but you don't know how to utilize it. Intermediate, you understand RA, you've had some experience, maybe you know about, hybrid versus competency based or what have you. And then, expert knowledge, developing programs, understanding the different sources of funding out there, knowing about how WIOA and co-enrollment works, and then recruiting apprentices or employers. So I guess maybe typing into the chat would be great. And I guess everyone can hear me. We're not having any issues on that front. Okay, great. I see a question in there about discussing in more detail the use of co-enrollment in relation to WIOA, and that's actually going to be a big focus of this presentation. So we're going to get into that in the coming slides. But thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, Alan, we've got an expert in the room.
An expert,
and
yeah.
Of course, that's Mark.
Yeah, expert. Oh, got a few experts.
Yeah.
Intermediary, yeah. Okay. Maybe we're waiting on just a few more people. And before we move any further, I do want to bring up, I am from Marlborough, New Jersey myself. I'm living in Potomac, Maryland now, but I am a New Jerseyan at heart. I miss the old Garden State. My parents, they live in Monroe, so maybe you'll hear some of the New Jersey accent come out occasionally. I still have it a little bit. I came down here for school and sort of stayed down here, but I'm still a Jersey boy. So, okay, so I think we got a range here of apprenticeship knowledge. So let's just go. We'll do a quick little overview of the registered apprenticeship system. If we could go to the next slide, please. So what is registered apprenticeship? It's a proven, customizable, and structured model to find and train diverse new talent, as well as upskill current workers in critical occupations. I mean, apprenticeship has been around really for hundreds of years. You can go back to the, you hear about the guilds back in the day, but in the more modern terms, the federal government has established apprenticeship since the 1930s. 1937 To be precise, there was this thing called the Fitzgerald Act that sort of established registered apprenticeship, but it has really been evolving and has become, in the last decade or so, one of the hot areas, excuse me, hot areas of workforce development. Personally, I'm going to give you a little background about myself. I have a degree in master's in public policy, and was working in a lot of workforce development in terms of, just using more traditional methods of training individuals. And then in around 2015, I got involved in registered apprenticeship, and I have seen over the past 9 years in particular, just the growth of registered apprenticeship and the funding streams, the new and diverse funding streams and diverse programs, the different occupations and industries that it's really gotten into. So registered apprenticeship really it's an old model, but it's becoming a new useful, it's a useful model that's very innovative. So let's, next slide, please. So there's some 5 core components of registered apprenticeship, although there are really a lot of subcomponents. There's that involvement of the employer, the ones they oftentimes their employers either helping develop the training module, or they're providing the structured on-the-job learning. A lot of times employers are sponsors, not always. There could be multiple employers in the registered apprenticeship system. A lot of times in the traditional registered apprenticeship, we a lot of times think of it as more of a union-based registered apprenticeship, where it's an employer unions do joint work, but employers really have multiple roles these days. They can help with the recruitment. They can help develop a lot of the core curriculum. So there's just a lot with them. And with that comes, as I said before, the structured on-the-job learning. That's what the apprentices are going to get. Oftentimes, they're getting 2,000 hours minimum of on-the-job learning. At least it's sometimes more, upwards of 8,000 hours, where they're learning the job. They're learning the job. They're learning the skills related to the job as they move from that apprentice to the journey worker. In addition is the related instruction. That's where you're going to get a lot of community colleges, educational institutions providing that related classroom learning that really bolsters and supplements that registered apprenticeship skills that they're getting on the job learning. The Department of Labor has established a minimum of 144 hours a year for this. It's very important. This is where there's a great coordinated effort to work with on-the-job learning. And of course, there's those rewards for skills gains. A lot of times the registered apprentices will come out making somewhat less than the journey workers, maybe 75%, 70% of the journey workers. And as they move along their registered apprenticeship journey, they will be earning to that 100% of what the journey worker will make. They get those rewards for gaining those skills, earning those competencies, or meeting certain time-based requirements. And finally, there's that national occupational credential. If you go through the registered apprenticeship system, you're going to get a DOL certified national occupational credential that says you went through this program. In addition to this, you can also get a lot of times these industry recognized credentials, which are very important for both the registered apprentice and the company that hires them. In a previous life, when I was first getting involved in registered apprenticeship, I helped develop these occupational frameworks that helped these industries develop to train individuals in registered apprenticeship. And oftentimes we would include these industry recognized credentials in addition to the credential they got from DOL. So this is something that's very crucial as well. Next slide, please. So there are several key organizational apprenticeship roles. There's the sponsor. That's the organization that agrees to operate an apprenticeship program and whose name the program is registered. Oftentimes it's a union or employer, but it can be really any institution. There are plenty of educational institutions. There are workforce boards that serve as sponsors. There's that RI provider that we mentioned that provides the instruction of apprentices in the designated occupations core knowledge. Oftentimes that's where you get your colleges are involved with it. And then there's the employer who provides the paid OJL. The employer can also be the sponsor at times, and they can even provide RI. And then there's the partners, organizations committed to assisting RA programs. If you could all just maybe type in the chat, if you have any organizational apprenticeship roles, if you've been involved in apprenticeship in any way, if you could let me know if you meet any of these criteria. Just give you all a minute. Oh, so we have intermediaries. Oh, okay. RTI. Okay, great. Yeah. So we have some definite, apprenticeship work here, which is great. Integration within the system. And if there are any additional roles that you're looking to take on in the coming years, you can also let us know. We're here to help with that as well. Okay, great. I think we can move to the next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about the current gaps in New Jersey's workforce alignment, and we can talk about, and this is where we're going to get involved with the co-enrollment with WIOA, how to get access to those funds, and really help align the system so that to really promote registered apprenticeship. Because as I said before, one of the biggest holdups I think in establishing registered apprenticeship is the lack of clear funding. That's one key area. Obviously, registered apprenticeship goes beyond the funding. There's partnerships that need to be developed, curriculum, what have you, recruitment of apprentices, employers, putting together everything. But having that funding in place at the end is very important as well to ensure that those systems that you built are supported. So next slide, please. So New Jersey has low co-enrollment. We did an analysis, we got some data, and we found that across the 3 WIBs that we looked at, only 270 individuals were actually co-enrolled in WIOA and registered apprenticeship, meaning they could actually access those WIOA funds to pay for either RI or OJL. That's the 931 box on the Pearl that needs to be checked for both individuals. So that was 270 individuals, but we're going to show in the next slide that's actually not the clearer picture of what is actually going on. And in addition to this, only 25 individuals were receiving registered apprenticeship training across 4 different WIBs, meaning that they were enrolled in the registered apprenticeship program. This is the 1303 box. So we're seeing that individuals who are coming into these workforce centers are not necessarily either being placed into registered apprenticeship or not being co-enrolled within the WIOA program, and that keeps a lot of the program funding locked. So next slide, please. But there is one WIB that really stood out, and that was Trenton. So of those 270 individuals, 266 were actually from this one WIB in Trenton. So there were only 4 across 2 other WIBs. And even though we didn't have the data for the other WIBs throughout the state, I'm guessing that the numbers were probably very low as well, maybe single digits, maybe low double digits. I can't say specifically, but that's our extrapolation here. So there were 266 individuals co-enrolled in WIOA and registered apprenticeship programs in Trenton out of 1223. That's 22% or so of eligible individuals co-enrolled. That's a very high percentage. What is a WIB? Is a workforce investment board. Sorry, Pearl is the data system that WIOA uses. The workforce board helps oversee the funding for the local workforce centers and counties. I think in New Jersey it's a county-based system, and the Pearl is the data that needs to be captured. There's quite a few elements, but the workforce boards are the ones who control. They're the ones who help really allocate a lot of the funding that's going to be done in these workforce. That's going to be done at the workforce centers in these communities. So, and we're going to get into that in the next few slides. But the WIBs or Workforce Development Board, maybe is how it's known in New Jersey, they are very important to talk to. So yeah, as we can see, 22% of individuals in Trenton are only co-enrolled. Now, we're not going to get 100% of individuals. We owe a co-enrollment registered apprenticeship programs. We know registered apprenticeship, it's not for everyone. It's a good solution for a lot of people, but not everyone is going to want to get involved in a registered apprenticeship program. There are other training out there, but having individuals involved in registered apprenticeship and will unlock a lot of those funds, which we're going to get into in our coming slides. Next slide, please. So, yeah, New Jersey has 111,779 individuals in WIOA Title I and II across its WIBs. So if each WIB co-enrolled at the same rate as possibly 24,312 people annually being co-enrolled, that's nearly 100 times the number that you currently have. So we're going to talk about how we can get that working there and what have you. But before I turn over to Melissa, do you have any questions about what we've spoken about? And you feel free to either type it, or you can speak it, whatever.
And Alan, I did. I'm sorry, I did put the link into the chat to find the local workforce boards for your specific area. I think there was a question.
Yes.
Yeah, there were a couple slides back where you pointed out the RTI. It was a very good slide on the combination of what's needed for a apprentice pathway, the way I'm describing it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you'll share this this slide deck, or if you can even go back there so I can take a screenshot.
Yeah, I think it's
it.
we can. I mean, ask Mark. He'll probably, in terms of sharing it, but I think it was slide 8 you're looking at.
Yeah, this is Mark, and yep, of course, I think that was Conrad who posed that question. Yeah, we'll share both the recording and slide deck. So yeah, no need to take a screenshot now. You'll have that slide deck in your email.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
It was well done. I thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, registered apprenticeships, it's a complex system. There's different state, New Jersey, as we saw, has an office of apprenticeship. New Jersey is what we call an OA state. So they're actually part of the National Office of Apprenticeship system. But most states in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are actually what they call SAA states, where there's a specific state apprenticeship agency that's sort of, I don't like to say they're separate from the Office of Apprenticeship, but they have their own standards, and they have their own, sometimes funding mechanisms and their own approval processes that can be different. So Pennsylvania, for example, is an SAA state. Maryland, where I live, is an SAA state. So these are just interesting aspects that differentiate. But I think, we've talked a lot about where New Jersey is with the WIBs, with the co-enrollment, and how, getting people co-enrolled, there's a lot of potential opportunities to unlock partnerships and funding. And I think, Melissa, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I will. If we could go to the next slide, please. So we do want to talk a little bit about, as Alan was talking, the workforce boards, just to make sure that everyone kind of understands that system. You can go on to the next slide while I'm talking through these pieces. But, basically WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, is federal money that comes to the state, and then the state divvies that out, unless they're a single state entity, divvies that out into multiple areas. Those areas, usually are a set of counties that were set up by with different demographics. So a lot of states look at commuting patterns, for example, so that if there's one specific area where you have commuters coming in from 5 to 12 to 17 different counties, then they'll designate that as a local area. That local area has a workforce board, which is made up of business and industry folks, as well as partners in the workforce system. and they make the decisions on how the money that come from the state to the local area gets spent. And so there's specific programs that are set up. So there would be funding for disadvantaged adults. There would be funding for opportunity youth. There would be funding for dislocated workers, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of times you can work with the local workforce board and or the state system and ensure that you are leveraging those WIOA dollars for your registered apprenticeship items. So for example, in this first bullet, you'll see that there's WIOA funding in the sense that there is something called an individual training account or an ITA. That ITA is like a scholarship, basically. And that scholarship can also be supplemented with WIOA dollars for things like books or sometimes transportation or childcare, or it could be, boots, steel-toed boots, for example. It could be scrubs. And again, all of those items for supportive services, all of those are decided by that local workforce board as to how they want to divvy up that funding. But again, that's money that you can then have your student to tap into to be able to get either a scholarship and or supportive services, especially for your registered apprenticeship programs. That workforce board is responsible for also creating partnerships across all of the demand occupations within their local area. So from the get-go, when a workforce board does the research to set up their area, they look at what the supply and the demand is for demand. And then they go out to those employers and they create those partnerships with employers to help them get the talent pipeline that's needed to fulfill their pipeline of workers. They also do a lot, they should be doing a lot between education and industry. So it's very important that if you're with an educational institution, that you are working specifically with the local workforce board. Again, just making sure that there's that partnership there to convene industry with. So many times we work with local workforce boards, or on the flip side, we work with education entities, and they're both doing these things, but they're not doing those things together. And so that is really just a waste of time and money, to be honest with you, whereas you could be leveraging each other in that partnership or that joint partnership together. Very specifically, in your workforce centers, your career centers, you have individuals that's coming and going every single day. Those individuals could be individuals coming from, for example, somewhere that has laid them off. They could come in for health and human services. They could come in for vocational rehabilitation or adult education. Or maybe they are just tired of the career pathway that they're in and they want to seek something else. So that would be a potential pipeline of students, first of all, for you all as a college or an educational institution, but additionally, it would also be a specific pipeline for registered apprenticeship. Now, let me get into like a little bit of the semantics. If an educational provider wants to be a technical instruction and get the money from the workforce board through WIOA, they have to be on something called the eligible training provider list. This is the ETPL, as noted on the second to last bullet point. That eligible training provider list is the list that I'm given when I walk into a career center and I say, I want to do something different, or I need a job, or I need training or upskilling. I'm given this list, and this list, it lists out all of the providers of the training, and it lists off all of the programs for training that's related to all the in-demand occupations for that local area. So it's very crucial that your registered apprenticeship programs also be on that ETPL list. And then last but not least, The support of the development of the related instruction curriculum is also a part of what the local workforce board does. They are constantly looking at the labor market information. So if there's a couple of new companies that's come into town or come into their local area that are IT related, then in their mind, they're thinking, oh, wow, this company is going to need a lot of IT workers, IT related workers. So therefore, I need to be working with my educational institutions on creating that pipeline of programs specific to whatever the need is for those companies. So again, as an educational provider, you always want to have a good relationship with the workforce board if at all possible. If you can go to the next slide. And certainly, again, if you have any questions about any of this, please place it in the chat. Alan, do you want to cover the workforce boards and the employers and sponsors?
Sure. Workforce boards really can be a great assistance to employers or sponsors. I mean, it's very important to note that workforce boards can really be the partners that you really need to bring in the apprentices for your program. You know, there's a lot of different individuals at the workforce boards and through the work to job centers that can help screen individuals, find out if they're interested in the apprenticeship program that your employer is offering, the sponsor is offering, and help provide them, you know, a linkage to the apprenticeship program. There's also supportive services that can be offered by workforce boards and, you know, the job centers. We mentioned that there are, you know, these supports that pay for OJT and RI, but, you know, workforce boards can also allocate funding. There's always very important to be here. Transportation can be always a big issue. There's other supportive issues with childcare and other areas, or even just getting them connected to other providers. This is very crucial. I mean, there's a lot of support out there that's just not taken up on because there just isn't enough knowledge by individuals. And this is where workforce boards and, you know, the entities they work with can really help get that information out there, get those connections going, make sure there's supports, you know. And this is very crucial. Obviously, a lot of times apprentices also are making, you know, a little less money to begin with. This is part of their, you know, the contract that they are part of, you know, their journey along to become a journey worker. So, you know, these supports can be very supportive. Like I said, like we've mentioned before, the OJT contract funding can help support percentage of wages. I think up to 50%, right, Melissa? Is that in some cases? So, you know, that's it could be obviously a big support for employers. They're making a large investment. You know, it's an investment that pays off. There has been evidence that shows that for every $1 invested in registered apprenticeship, you can get $1.44 back. You know, this is one way to even bolster that return on investment, getting that WIOA money to really help support. There's also partnerships that can be built with training providers on the ETPL for registered for related instruction. You know, the ITAs can help pay for that as well. They can help pay for a portion, if not all, of the apprentices related instruction, and also work and develop these partnerships with, you know, colleges, especially community colleges, to help build the system to support registered apprenticeship. And we're going to show a few examples out there in the field where there really is a great concerted effort between colleges and workforce boards to support registered apprenticeship. You know, we talked about how there's workforce boards can really help implement RA programs and register RA programs. We were talking about, you know, how we can come together. The workforce boards can really help with the employer slash sponsor, get everyone together, get all these partners together, get that funding together, build that pipeline of apprentices. Very important. And finally, you know, that can culminate with these job fairs, recruiting events to connect potential apprentices and employers. You know, they have BSRs, these business service representatives, through workforce centers that can really help connect businesses and bring them together with apprentices if the coordination is there. And that is obviously a big thing to look into. Before I move on, are there any questions about what we've been saying? anything you want to discuss?
And Ellen, I'll just add a point there that, every workforce board has a business services team, or at least they should. And that business services team is made up of multiple representatives of the workforce system. And again, just making sure that if you're, especially with an educational institution or a education provider, you want to make sure that you're part of that team. Because that's really where the rubber meets the road, where that team is going out to work with employers specifically, and they answer a lot of those questions and or do a lot of outreaches related to registered apprenticeship as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, Melissa. Yeah, getting connected with these individuals is crucial. As are workforce liaisons that a lot of times the boards will have. These are also key individuals who you want to talk to, who can liaise between the workforce system and really get that co-enrollment that we've been talking about going. So I guess we move to the next slide. Yeah. How workforce boards can help community-based organizations. This is, another area I think we've been talking about this, but workforce boards really do help offer that education on registered apprenticeship. There's really, one thing we're working on at Safal is getting that alignment with the workforce boards and the workforce system and registered apprenticeship. And with that alignment, they have the education to really show how registered apprenticeship can really benefit companies, can benefit different organizations out there. It's a lot of great information that I think, it's out there, but it's not being accessed. And that this is where workforce boards can really help in that. And, as we said before, the connecting apprentices to employers, providing the supportive services, getting those apprentices with the resources available. These are all crucial supports that workforce boards can help do. I know we've been talking about this multiple times, but the workforce boards can be a key ingredient to accessing a lot of the supports that don't really seem to be out there initially. There's not a lot of direct federal funding per se for apprenticeships. They do put out some grants here and there. There's more money coming out through what I've been working on with Melissa and actually others is this Investing in America agenda. But that being said, there's not as much direct funding out there in the way that there can be, or at least that seems as apparent to many individuals. So these workforce boards can really help unlock a lot of those funds and ensure that those resources are available, in addition to building out the entire system that can really help you put together the registered apprenticeship program to support, in educating individuals and getting them into high quality careers.
And Alan, I'll interject here. The workforce boards, when I was a local workforce board director and I was a state workforce board director, and one of the most important pieces of my role was to create really great partnerships with community-based organizations, because normally those community-based organizations had their pulse on what was truly needed down deep into the community. So oftentimes as a workforce board, I wanted to make sure, especially from a DEIA perspective, that I was working with all populations and making sure that I was including all populations in the pipeline of talent that both I was getting resources to, but also working with employers to create a talent pipeline for. And a lot of times those community-based organizations, they were absolutely a direct door to being able to get into working with marginalized populations. So again, they are also a part of the system, the complete workforce system, because a lot of times when we talk about workforce, we think workforce boards think WIOA, or if they're very broadly viewing the system, they're thinking all of the partners of the system. And again, I want to just really place emphasis on how important community-based organizations are to a workforce board and to educational providers to really get in the roots of a community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good segue into the next slide, actually. Some really great examples out there. One is here in Howard County Community College. I say here, I live in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I used to live in Howard County. It's where Columbia, Maryland is, for those of you who might be familiar with the area. And they have a great coordination there between the state board and the local economic development authority and the local boards to provide funding to the college to offer IT apprenticeships to local students. So they're actually, the board is working with the development authority and with the local high schools to offer pre-apprenticeships to students in the IT areas. They're working with the local college, the Howard County Community College there, to offer training in a lot of different industries. Oh, you had Howard on. Well, that's great. Okay, well, maybe they probably described it a little better than me, but I mean, they have some great systems, and I think they're training in just a lot of different industries, not just, I think a lot of people think of registered apprenticeship, like I mentioned earlier, as more of a construction or a heavy industry, but they're doing it in biomedical equipment, electrical, HVAC, IT, as I mentioned, plumbing, nursing. There's just so many different occupations that they're there for, both some of the more traditional industries, cutting edge, but even as we're finding, traditional industries are including a lot of cutting edge training in it, and that's where registered apprenticeship can help. That's why the community college is working with the boards to unlock the funding in those partnerships. Very crucial. Another one is in Indiana. They have the efforts of the state, the Office of the Workforce. I'll just say OWBLA. They have credits with the CTE community college partner Ivy Tech to build a pathway for apprentices to complete with an associate's degree. So the state board is working with this Ivy Tech. I actually work with Ivy Tech on a couple on CSG, and there's other projects. They're a great community college that really helps to work with the entire system, and they have so many different grant funding opportunities out there, and it's such a great coordination with the state board that they're able to really get a lot of apprenticeships out there to align their curriculum. They work with employers to make sure that apprentices have, access to that related instruction. That's very crucial for them. And then the last one I've also worked with in the past is the College of the Canyons and the South Bay WIB. So that WIB actually serves, the South Bay WIB actually serves as a sponsor, which we saw. I know we have a sponsor. I think we may have a WIB sponsor here, but I'm not sure. But that's not it's a somewhat rare occurrence, but the WIB here is actually sponsoring, and they got a $12 million federal grant. They also have, I think, state funding supplementing that. California does put out a lot of state money. And they're working with the College of the Canyons to deliver services to over 5,000 apprentices and pre-apprentices. And not only that, they put together all these partnerships. They have this group called the SWAG, which is I think the Strong Working, let me find that specific acronym and what it stands for, the Strong Workforce Apprenticeship Group. So they actually have great coordination in the College of the Canyons. So the college and the WIB are really working together, leveraging these funds to provide all these services to these apprentices. They're working with local employers. They're working with local trade organizations and industry groups to provide all these apprenticeships, primarily in advanced manufacturing. But there's just this great coordination. And they're unlocking these funds, and they're providing the supports that a lot of the apprentices need. A lot of them are, younger, or maybe they come from a somewhat more, disadvantaged background, so they need the supports. And this is where it's all working together and really providing that coordination that I think is very critical that we've been really speaking about. Melissa, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think you've covered it there. I'll try to get some of the links for this into the chat.
Sure, I can send a few too. So I guess we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so we're here to help you. Actually, maybe even the next slide might be better. Where there is if you have your phones there, you can use the QR code, and you can reach out to us to be, we provide no cost training, as we mentioned earlier, and we have just a lot of great services and a lot of great materials within our grasp, so to speak. So, but that being said, if you have any questions for us right now, we are more than happy to take them.
Yeah, and if I could add, I know there was someone that's wanted to talk more about co-enrollment. Well,
Oh,
we covered a bit of co-enrollment, but did you have any additional questions as related to co-enrollment?
I'll comment on that. I'm Fran Kuhn. I'm the Executive Director of the Atlantic County Workforce Development Board. And the Department of Labor here in New Jersey has just begun talking about co-enrollment as a vehicle to, I guess, engage some of these processes. But it's not really clear. We've been operating as a sponsor for registered apprenticeship for about 3 years now. And we're a smaller county. Total county population is only 270,000. Our claim to fame is the casinos. Casinos aren't really the pathway to apprenticeship. We're trying to develop and expand, diversify some of the other industry in the area. But our biggest challenge is trying to make the connection to employers to engage in registered apprenticeship processes, even though we can help them with both the on-the-job learning and the related technical instruction. It just seems like the lift for employers, especially small employers, is pretty difficult to manage for the amount of time that they have to manage it in order to engage in a real registered apprenticeship work process. So we're part of the community of practice. We're having conversations about that, but that still seems to be our area of challenge.
Yeah, we hear this a lot, and I'm seeing 2 thumbs up from Jeanette too. So, and as a local workforce board, I had the exact same experiences in a couple of different states, to be honest with you. What I would say is that first, when I would go to sell, I'm air quoting sell, registered apprenticeship, it was always, I always found that if I talked about registered apprenticeship right off the bat, the employers were like, no, thank you. Because they first would always think I was talking union, which was an issue. Secondly, they would think red tape out the wazoo, which would be the second issue. And then third, I would get the no thank you. So I will be honest, I never went in talking registered apprenticeship right off the bat. However, I asked a lot of questions about what do you need as an employer? And often they always said, we need employees who are coming in somewhat trained, right, in the area, but we're going to train them ourselves regardless on our processes and procedures. Secondly, we have employees within incumbent employees who additionally need training. And oftentimes, the Economic Development Authority, whoever that ended up being, would either help me with that registered apprenticeship program, which ended up being a registered apprenticeship program. But if they were not in the mix and they did not understand the value of registered apprenticeship program, it would be a harder sell to employers. So I would first say, number one, talk with your economic development partners and have them really have a very thorough understanding of what registered apprenticeship can do for employers. If they don't understand it, you're going to have even a harder time selling it. The second piece was that it was always advantageous for me to begin to just walk down the road with OJT. We would make part of the plan B. Okay, so let's kind of outline what this would be like. Like, what's the training? What's involved? What do you really want them to have? And at that point, honestly, they're also doing what's needed with registered apprenticeship, right? But they don't really get that. And so as we would begin to outline those pieces down the line, that's when I started talking about, okay, so you've had a couple of OJTs. How have they been working? They've been working well. Would you like to structure this in a better way so that maybe they could even get a credential? Maybe there's a wage gain. You see where I'm going with that. Like, I would build registered apprenticeship in down the line with those employers rather than start right up front. I hardly ever had success right up front, especially if it was outside of construction trades for IT or healthcare or something of that nature. So that's my advice as a local workforce director. That's how our team sold registered apprenticeship. A lot of times it was never up front. It was 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
We've been doing OJT now for about 4 years, maybe 4.5. As far as the Workforce Development Board, we have all 4 components of work-based learning employed to some degree. But the registered apprenticeship pieces that we have in place are standalone with small mom and pops who are their own sponsors. We're just trying to offer some kind of financial support for either the wage reimbursement or the technical instruction. But it's on a very limited basis, and it's a difficult sell.
Yeah, I totally understand. And Alan, did you have something to add? I'm sorry.
Well, so I'm sorry, you're an intermediary and a sponsor, is that
Yes.
the case? Yeah.
Yes.
That puts you in a unique position. I know that there's also, I mean, registering a program can be a burdensome process as well as keeping up with those regulations. So
we felt that it was beneficial because we could handle the administrative functions of Rapids and developing the work process and facilitating those pieces.
Yeah,
but
and that's something that
getting over that first hump.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you can always. That's a good way to assist with small businesses, is letting them know that you can really help in that area. This is, we've seen the growth of the intermediary role, or even the larger, just sponsoring the CoP, just being able to take that off their plate can be a real benefit, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah.
And I was looking at, the more advanced level job titles within those organizations to say we can start with an OJT and then build that into an intermediate level skill for that employer through the registered apprenticeship. But it's like I said, it's a tough sell.
Do you have, and let me ask this, do you have industry associations in your area as well?
Industry associations, no, I would say we do not.
Okay. Another thought, just as a convener of industry, maybe bringing several industries together, several businesses together as in a collaborative effort, and building off of that as related to what skill set across the board they need. I did something similar with the healthcare sector several years ago. They were all competing for the same people, right? One person was 50 cents over here, and then somebody else would offer 75, and they'd jump, and then it was a jumping game.
Right.
But when I brought them together, and it takes some time to build those relationships as a collaborative, they figured out very quickly that they also need to be working together a bit more than what they were, rather than competing with each other so much. But after we created that collaborative, then we were able to then start a cohort of individuals, whereas this collaborative understood this cohort was for the collaborative. And then, of course, bringing in your educational partner to create that program.
Right.
But that's just another thought that I'd throw out there.
Okay.
And I'll add, and Fran, I was just doing some looking around. Do you ever interact with the Atlantic County Economic Alliance? Does that sound familiar? Because I just popped on their site and I noticed right on their front page, they have a veterans, they call it a veterans film apprenticeship, training veterans.
Yeah, we're working on that right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, great. I thought that would be a good group.
It sounds better than what it is.
Okay. It's just in the early stages.
I can explain that.
Yeah, it's just in the early stages. Okay, all right.
I think it was part of the educational process for the Economic Alliance to understand more about registered apprenticeship.
Yeah. So I would just like to jump in. It is definitely a heavy lift for the employers in Ocean County as well to commit to a registered apprenticeship. And Melissa, I have followed exactly the way that you have stated, by starting off low and trying to move up. But they are very, very hesitant to partner through with the United States Department of Labor, because we are not state, we are an OA, as you mentioned. And so it is very difficult. I actually, I tried to get something done with the casinos as well, and the unions would not allow it. And we have small businesses here. We don't have large companies that can sustain a large population. And the only other thing that I'm going to add, and then I won't be negative at all because I really want this to work, is that the registered apprenticeships that are on Rapids really are more geared towards the 4-year college instead of the 2-year. We're in RTI for 2 years. And by the time they have learned what they need in order to launch into the apprenticeship, they're leaving us to go to their second portion of their education. So that's a bit of a challenge. And I think that's something in-house that we have to look at. But I am actually going to take you at your word and start to work with the board, the what was it that you called it? The Workforce Development Board.
Yes.
Our program is only 3 years old,
Mhm.
and we do have registered apprentices employed, but currently we have not. We've had 11 go through successfully in 2 different areas. So it hasn't been horrible. It's just the buy-in from the employer. And I'm the only person, by the way, in the college that does this. There's no other person. So I think that might be a part of it. But truly, Melissa, I started out by, hey, but you're already doing this. There's somebody out there that's teaching your new employee things to do. And, you know, you've already done this. There is a mentor. We have the mentor. We'll partner with you. We do all the paperwork. You don't have to do anything. Like all of those things that you've mentioned, we have done. And we have not been, the biggest challenge we have right now, as I said, I'll stop. Junior accounting students. We have 22 students that have put their name on a list to become junior accountant apprentices. And no one in Ocean County wants to hire them. And I have spoken with Deloitte, Waters and Sims, the 4 majors, as they're called, and they don't do registered apprenticeships because they have a paid internship in which that's their reading for hiring. So they said, nope, we're not interested. I've even gone into Monmouth County and tried to get some employer partners there. But everybody, as soon as they see the United States Department of Labor, it's just like, no.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in. I know this is a great conversation that started. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. And we do, as a reminder, next month is our peer-to-peer session on this topic. So we'll have pretty much the whole hour to kind of enter in and talk about discussions. But Fran, Jeanette, great points that you brought up. And I encourage you both, speak with your coaches about that. Either if it's Brianne or Cassandra, there's good things to kind of discuss on your one-on-one calls. What worked, what didn't work in approaching employers like Deloitte, what could, you do different, what kind of businesses are in your area, and 2, help with connecting to your board in Ocean County if you're not connected. So all good things to talk with your coach about. And I got great ideas that we're going to plan to focus on the next peer-to-peer session. Melissa, Alan, thank you very, very much for joining us today. And please, you have our support here within the community of practice, but as Alan and Melissa said, you got this great, their great TA Center of Excellence there available to support you even further in depth. So thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over lastly to Shamar to close this out here. And again, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It sounds like you just gave a fitting closing, but just some quick reminders for our focus sites. Next month in March, we'll meet again on Tuesday, March 26th here at 11 a.m. where we'll focus on a peer-to-peer session, local workforce board's role in registered apprenticeship. So we'll pick up some of this conversation that we just had. It was great. Don't forget to meet with your coaches, either Brianne or Cassandra, on completing your action plans with your registered apprenticeship goals if you haven't done that already. And we're starting, if you haven't received it yet this week, we have started sending recurring monthly emails with community of practice reminders and updates, as well as registered apprenticeship events and resources. The February email, okay, Mark, was sent last week, and some of the resources that Alan and Melissa shared today, we'll have some of that in March's email. And don't forget, if you have any questions or any requests, feel free to contact me. My email is here. We'll be sure to support you. And if no one else has anything else, we thank you for joining us and looking forward to seeing you next month. Thanks, everybody.